Ian Prepper here. Big news, guys. It appears as though we could just be hours away from Russia commissioning a full-scale mobilization of the military, locking down the borders so able-bodied males cannot leave, and declaring a full-scale total war on Ukraine. Now, coincident with this, we have some evidence to suggest that Belarusian citizens are being called into military enlistment offices. Able-bodied males aged 18 to 60 are being called up for duty. If it's true that Belarus is in fact getting ready to join this war, everything changes, and this is a major inflection point in the conflict. I don't think they are going to officially join the war, but they're definitely going to be a major party to the conflict. Now, according to this video that's been circulated around 150,000 times, and this has been referenced by the very pro-Western mainstream news network, Newsweek, this message on this sign claims to say that all able-bodied males age 18 to 60 must report to enlistment offices. Now, there are three possible explanations for this, maybe more, three that I can think of. One is that this was accidental, but it's foreshadowing what the Belarusian government intends to do in the not-so-distant future. The second thing is that the internet could be blowing it out of proportion, that it's not a mandatory draft, and it is just a call for volunteerism. Thirdly, it could be what everybody fears, which is an actual beginning of a military draft in Belarus. Okay, now if that is the case, then again, that is a major escalation. Now, guys, you're going to have to forgive me. I think I'm coming down with something. The brain fog is kicking in. Didn't sleep well last night, and I'm running a calorie deficit. So if I make it through this video without any verbal blunders, that will be a miracle. But after the incident that took place in the Donbass, where I believe, according to Russian estimates, 93 soldiers had died. According to some Western estimates, it's up to 500. Whether those are deaths or casualties really doesn't matter, because remember, a casualty is actually worse than a death, because a casualty not only takes out a soldier from the conflict, but it means that one or two of his buddies have to carry him off the field into safety, and of course he requires medical care. So as bad as it sounds, casualties are actually worse than deaths. Injuries are worse than deaths in terms of burdening the adversary with the task of having to care for those people afterwards. You don't have to care for a person who's in a coffin. Now, after this event, as I expected, this created a lot of anger and animosity towards Ukraine in Russia. Just like in the Vietnam War, every time the Americans went through a village, they took out some Viet Cong. All they did was create more enemies, because every time you take one person's life, all of their family members are now going to be eternally against you in some way, shape, or form. And that is exactly what has happened. This may well be the Reichstag moment that Putin needed in order to ensure that he could do this full-scale mobilization with the support of his population. Okay, so apparently there is a soldiers' widows group, they're calling themselves. Not a very popular one, but they're a little-known patriotic group who supports the widows of Russian soldiers, has called on Vladimir Putin to order a large-scale mobilization of millions of men and to close the borders to ensure victory. Now, is this group just put up by the government? Are they some sort of co-opted group that Putin just, created, or some people within the Kremlin created in order to call for a general mobilization? It is very possible. Anything is possible at this point, especially because they're so explicit in their demands here. They're saying that we want Putin to carry out a full-scale mobilization in a post that they made on Telegram. Again, I don't know a whole lot about this group. They're claiming that they're the soldiers' widows group. And like I say, that maps on exactly to what I said, that all big incidents like these are going to do is create a lot of anger and hostility towards the Ukrainians on the part of the Russians. And that's not what you want. They've even gone so far to quote Stalin, saying that Stalin did not think about ratings or dissatisfaction among dissidents. He thought only of victory, and now is not the time to be cowardly. They went so far to suggest that they should employ something like a not a step back order, which would bring harsh consequences for draft dodgers. Could be in the form of charges of treason, jail time, or worse, definitely public ridicule. So that is just one data point that points towards mobilization. We also have Ukrainian intelligence, which is essentially American intelligence, suggesting that this is going to happen tomorrow, which in some parts of the world is probably already today, or today is, anyways, like I say, brain fog, guys. But according to them, January 5th is the day that Putin is going to announce another round of mobilization. If they just lost another 500 troops, and the attritional rate of both of these armies is massive, in the hundreds per day. Now, everybody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about the fact that Russia has been laying it on thick on the Ukrainians. There's this video circulating of a journalist who's speaking to a French news station live, and a thermobaric bomb, or what looks to appear something like a thermobaric bomb, goes off in the background. According to the Russians, they've taken out 8 HIMARS systems in the last 24 hours. Now, that's what they're saying. That would be a lot. I don't think that the Ukrainians would be dumb enough to concentrate 8 HIMARS systems. Not the rockets, not interceptions, but 8 systems. And I believe they only had somewhere between 16 and 20 throughout the whole course of the war. So if they've taken out 8, that is huge. That is a huge response. The Russians, of course, claiming that they're killing anywhere between, or killing and maiming anywhere between 500 to 1,000 troops a day. Now, remember when they talked about flattening the curve because, you know, you don't want to overwhelm the hospitals? I have no idea how either side is right now coping with all of these casualties. I don't know how on earth they're doing it, because if you're taking, you know, both sides, even by their conservative estimates, then you're talking about hundreds of soldiers a day going to their deaths. So not good. Now, we also have a phone call, which according to the Ukrainians, they intercepted. It's a Russian soldier who's talking about rumors that there will be a full mobilization. Now, anytime Ukraine claims to have intercepted a phone call, alarm bells go off, because typically all of these phone calls that I've listened to, it's almost as if the guy who's claiming to be Russian is saying exactly what you would want to hear if you are trying to demoralize the other side. And this one is really no different, so take it with a grain of salt, but it could be very real. There is a big fog of war, especially on the Russian side right now, because, I mean, everybody has their cell phones off, because that's how they're triangulating, and they're looking for concentrations of cell phone signals. According to the Russians, that's what caused this recent blunder. There's this strategic or tactical blunder, if you want to call it that, is the fact that Russian soldiers had their cell phones on. And it's not hard to figure out where people are and how many people are there if people have their cell phones on. Anyways, there's a fog of war, so we don't really know what's going on. This Russian soldier on the phone has claimed that there's a new mobilization is expected before or right after the new year. So this information was from, obviously, maybe over a week ago. And yeah, according to him, and this is where I start to think maybe this is BS, he's saying that he is being sent back to the front line again just a week after being injured. And according to him, the Russian invaders had managed to train only one company of 30 men properly, and the rest were drinking heavily. Again, I'm very suspicious about these, so it is what it is. But the Ukrainians are quite insistent that the Russians are, in fact, planning a military mobilization. What else can I talk about here? Like I said, it's going to be a shorter video, guys. because I'm just not feeling too up to task today, but we got to get this information out there because things are just changing so rapidly. Of course, we still have the 101st Airborne deployed in Romania, simulating a war with Russia. I'm not sure why that was in the news again today. It's like they were just reiterating that fact, reminding us all that that is the case. Now, if Belarus enters the war, does that mean that the Baltic states are going to play a more active role in the conflict and things are just going to spiral out of control from there? Possibly. Ukraine says that they are planning a major offensive for spring. So they're saying that the Russians are planning a major offensive in early February, and they are planning a counteroffensive in spring. So the potential for things to go wrong is very, very high. And I think it's the Minister of Defense or the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency of Ukraine has said that attacks in Russia would be deeper and deeper inside their territory. But also he said that he'd be able to comment on who carried out these strikes only after the end of the war. Now that is incredibly concerning because, of course, anytime you have that sort of stuff happening within Russia, that's when this becomes a strategic issue and things could definitely spiral out of control to the nuclear level. Speaking of nuclear, according to Joe Biden, don't worry, we're not going to be sharing our nukes with South Korea. The South Korean president begs to differ, which means that JB is likely full of crap. If JB walks something back and says that, no, I never said that, you know that, the United States is going to partake in some level of nuclear strategy with the South Koreans, okay? Like I've been saying, guys, this weather is crazy, okay? We got thousands of records shattered in historic winter warm spell in Europe. Get a load of this. I've been telling you guys about this when not many people have. This is Europe's saving grace this year. This is the only thing that is keeping gas prices down is the warming of the planet. Now, wouldn't it be ironic if we stopped having to rely on gas and oil so much because the planet got so hot and that's how the equilibrium happened? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? But check this out. Especially, okay, Europe is just getting cooked right now. We're talking about temperature records like 20 degrees above average, okay? Poland, the mercury hit 20 degrees in Poland. Okay, the average for this time of year is around 1 degree. Czech Republic, 20 degrees, average of 3 degrees. This is Celsius. So 20 degrees Celsius, that's just a degree off room temperature, to give you some perspective for my American friends. On Sunday, in Belarus, 16.4 degrees, beating the country's previous record by nearly 4.5 degrees. That's a huge break-in record. Usually you're talking about a degree or so, but that is scary. What's summer going to be like is what I want to know. Maybe that's when we start using all the energy in the form of air conditioners. That's when people are going to be dropping like flies. This stuff could come down on us fast. Northern Spain and the south of France basked in beach weather at 25 degrees Celsius. All of these places just shattering records right now, temperature records. So that is, and even just in China now, it's starting to warm up again as well. And you have some patches where this is below average temperatures, but by and large, the Arctic has been like this all year. The Arctic is heating up. And what this actually means, guys, is that Europe, it could swing back the other way. Because remember, this jet stream is so unpredictable. I would not be surprised that if we've seen a massive cold streak in Europe late January, early February, it very well could happen. And it seems like the opposite of what you'd expect to happen is happening now. And check out North America here. We're no better. I mean, look at that. Look at all that dark, reddish, brownish colors. I mean, this is hot. This is all above average temperatures. You can see the indicator on this side here. Any warmer colors mean that it's above. These are weather anomaly temperatures, 2-meter weather anomaly. Any cooler colors mean that it's below average. So right now, certain parts of California, slightly below average, but this place is just getting burnt. And just, 2 weeks ago, they had one of the worst snowstorms in history. That's because there's more moisture in the atmosphere when the temperature elevates, all right? And let's just check out the sea surface temperature anomaly. Let's see what that's doing. Same thing, like all in the northern hemisphere is just getting cooked right now. So shit's hitting the fan, man. What more can I say? There's an article circulating on, what else do we got to cover here? There's an article circulating that's very popular about the 6 cities most at risk of danger in a nuclear attack. Not really going to talk about that today, but they do say in this article, according to Business Insider, which is a very mainstream news source, that there isn't a single jurisdiction in America that has anything approaching an adequate plan to deal with the nuclear detonation, something we've been saying for the longest time. That is why it is critical that people start to educate themselves now when it comes to proactively preparing for disasters that might occur in the future. Why don't they just come out and say, start preparing for nuclear Armageddon? I mean, New York said it in their PSA. You had radiation signs on the buses that we've been talking about. So they're getting us primed for this possibility. It seems like these things are probably going to converge at some point this year, especially if Belarus enters the conflict. Even though their numbers are largely insignificant in the grand scheme of things, it means that a new front is opening up and the war is expanding. France has temporarily banned the online sale of paracetamol. It's a painkiller, and they're saying that all these medical shortages, these medicine shortages, over-the-counter meds, a lot of them, and antibiotic shortages are due to declining demand for antibiotics during the pandemic when everybody was locked down, coupled down with a severe strain on the supply chains that forced drug makers to scale back their production at the time, which is funny because you'd think during a pandemic you wouldn't be scaling anything back. Health experts claim this. However, as many countries experienced the first winter without restrictions in 2 years, supply constraints and regulatory requirements have prevented pharmaceutical companies from increasing production volumes. So that's why we're in the predicament. That's why you can't get children's Tylenol anywhere in Canada, among other drugs. So make sure you go get your Jace Case Medical antibiotics if they are available, because there is a shortage of amoxicillin and penicillin right now, I do believe. Interesting infographic for your consideration here. This is U.S. inflation. How much have prices increased in the last 12 months in 2022? Food at elementary schools increased a whopping 254%. I'm not sure why that would be the case. Fuel oil, 65%. Eggs, 50%. Airline fares, 36%. You just got to be like the all-American prepper. You want to never leave the house. Just kidding. Butter and margarine, 34%. We got coffee at 24%. Public transportation, 24%. Fats and oils, 20%. Apparently, didn't the price of food only go up like 10% or something, they said? It looks like almost every type of food has went up. So are they equally weighting things? Like, you can't equally weight an avocado with something like bread. You know, like let's say avocado prices went up 1% and bread went up 20%. Well, you can't say the average food increase is 10%. It just doesn't make sense because bread is a staple, right? So you almost have to separate this stuff out. Energy, only 13%, surprisingly. Gasoline, 10%, and that's going up again. But beef and veal, this actually found surprising, down 5%, and smartphones, down 24%. Fortunately, you can't eat your cell phone, but they sure can track you down. This is an interesting article here. American phone tracking firm demoed surveillance powers by spying on the CIA and the NSA. They basically, this company proved that their technology worked because they were able to actually spy on CIA members using their cell phones against them. And you can go and read this article if you want. I do not have the energy to go over it with you today. There's probably a lot of other things I did not touch on today, but guys, that's what's going on. It appears as though the war is about to take a turn for the worse. So stay prepped, stay ready, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoy the video, Canadian Prepper out.